All right, this is going to be a weird one. I just got done recording the Zechariah stuff, the last 3 episodes that you listened to. Those I recorded all at once, and sometimes I do that. I'm just like, all right, I kind of got an idea of what we need to look up, and I've sketched out my little list of what verses and passages we're going to bounce all over the place and find. And this is going to be a hoot, and however long it takes, and then we'll just, throw on some bumpers at the end and cut it up in post. And if it's a 3-day thing, whatever, fine. You're smart. You can tell what I'm doing there. Then I get done with that, and I'm doing the normal thing that I do. I've got a little computer, and I export the audio and everything, and I send it off to Jeff for him to publish. And as I'm going through that part of the task, which is pretty mundane, I'm sitting there thinking about the Star Wars series that I just got done watching. Kenobi came out here over the last few weeks, as I'm talking right now, and it was fine. Not quite fine. Let's go with fine minus. No, let's go with unfine plus. The first 3 episodes, nothing happens. I won't spoil anything if you're going to watch it. This will be fine. And then the last 3 episodes, kind of the same thing happens each of the last 3 episodes. And you get done with the thing and you're like, so much of the narrative tension in all of this is just because you couldn't have really relatively easy adult conversations between people who've known each other for their whole lives. It's not believable. There are all kinds of problems narratively in terms of, wait, how come that person can do that, but they couldn't do that? Wait, how come that kills that guy, but it doesn't kill that guy, that lady, that guy, or that guy? How does this work? The rules are inconsistent. The payoffs are inconsistent. It just looks like what it is, a very disjointed, sometimes fun, sometimes enjoyable, escapist, but overwhelmingly just kind of unsatisfying story. That's how I feel about Star Wars. And I like Star Wars. And then I'm sitting and thinking about what we just talked about with the whole Zechariah thing and Matthew and Isaiah 11 and all of these narratives moving forward and just how dang good it is. And maybe it's not fair to compare the two before you even get into the supernatural claims behind the Bible. I don't think there are any such claims behind Star Wars. If so, oh dear, that is one flimsy deity. Maybe it's not fair to compare the two just because you got so much time that elapses over the course of writing the Bible. And that gives people a lot of time to think about it and really internalize the stories and carefully consider all the angles and meanings and depth to it. And so, maybe just the time advantage is something that you got to acknowledge. Maybe the whole one claims to have a deity inspiring all of it advantage is another thing you got to acknowledge. But in sum, the products just are not equal. I am reminded once again that the Bible is just so dang good. And if you read it for, is every story sanitary and does it have all of my values? It will disappoint you because they're not, and it doesn't. If you read it for, does every single thing pay off and do I feel good at the end? I think you'll be disappointed because some of the payoffs are held out as coming after the end of the document. If you read it for, do the characters and does the hero make me feel at peace with myself all the time and affirmed in who I am, you're really not going to feel good because one of the central points of what the main character of the document is saying is that there's something wrong with you and that you therefore need the main character of the document to solve that. And that character cohesively says that in a whole bunch of different environments, in a whole bunch of different ways, at a whole bunch of different times. It just hangs together so well. The themes are so pronounced. And what jogged my memory on this is what we were just looking at with the whole Zechariah thing. I mean, think about what we talked about the last few days. You have got, at the most narrow, zoomed-in view, the parable of the tenants in Matthew chapter, it's the end of 21, right? It's been a whole 40 minutes since I recorded that, so now I forget things. It is the end of 21, right? Yes, it's the end of 21. The parable of the tenants. Let me just remind you of this so we can see the symmetry together and appreciate it at the expense of the beloved film franchise Star Wars. Matthew 21:33. Listen to another parable. This is Jesus talking. There was a landowner who planted a vineyard. He put a wall around it, dug a wine press in it, and built a watchtower. Then he rented the vineyard to some farmers and went away on a journey. When the harvest time approached, he sent his servants to the tenants to collect his fruit. The tenants seized his servants, and they beat one, killed another, and stoned a third. Then he sent other servants to them, more than the first time, and the tenants treated them the same way. Last of all, he sent his son to them. They will respect my son, he said. But when the tenants saw the son, they said to each other, this is the heir. Come, let's kill him and take his inheritance. So they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. Therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, Jesus then asks the religious leaders who he's talking to right there, what will he do to those tenants? As it pertains to Jesus' relationship with the religious leaders of the day, that parable right there that comes pretty close to the very end of his exchanges, his interactions with those religious leaders, that is a summary of the whole thing. That's it. The assertion against them is you were given a responsibility to point people to God, and you didn't do it for a variety of reasons. God gave you everything you needed to do it. He equipped you in the same way that I equipped the disciples back in chapter 10 and sent them out in open world quests. So you were equipped with even more than that. And you got it so wrong that it can only be attributed to malice, not even ineptitude. You maliciously put a barrier between God and the people you were supposed to help. And not only did you maliciously put up barriers, you punished and killed anybody who tried to set things straight. So you've got this parable of the tenants that is a microcosm of the larger narrative tension between Jesus and the religious leaders. I'm making gestures with my hands. Parable of the tenants, little pinchy pinch with my fingers. Then, at about head height, I'm making a gesture about the size of a large encyclopedia book running side to side saying, and then you've got this larger story that's sort of an umbrella over the top of that, a macrocosm of that parable. That's the book of Matthew, particularly the parts about the relationship between Jesus and the religious leaders. And now I've got my hands over my head making a great big rainbow. And then you've got an even bigger expression of that story that is Zechariah's prophecy that he recites from God, condemning the people who've gotten this wrong, like since the very, very beginning of time. Matthew isn't just a fulfillment of the smoking gun prophecies of Zechariah, like how he's going to ride on a donkey. Check this out. There's that. But Matthew represents a fulfillment of like the whole thrust of Zechariah, which represents a summary of like God's entire case against what his people have gotten wrong along the way. And so I marvel at those 3 or 4 levels of symmetry and the way they all pay off one level down. But then just look at Matthew in general. And again, this is stuff we kind of talked about yesterday, but I'm excited about it. We're going to talk about it again. The Sermon on the Mount opens with the statements of the values of the kingdom. And at the opening foray, the first time in the book of Matthew that Jesus speaks with the religious leaders present, remember in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is teaching his disciples, but the religious leaders are there. The first opening thing that he says with them there, the first block of thought has this in it. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. There's your opening thought. Then a whole bunch of tension and screwed up crap happens between Jesus and the religious leaders as they try to cook up ways to kill him. Finally, in Jesus' last meaningful public exchange with those same religious leaders who sound a lot like the people being condemned by the prophecy in Zechariah and the story, the plot, the words of the book of Zechariah in general, those same exact religious leaders in the final exchange between Jesus and them, that's in Matthew 23, it concludes with, again, I read this the other day, but here it is again, you snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell? Therefore I'm sending you prophets and wise men and teachers. Some of them you will kill and crucify, others you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town. And so upon you will come all the righteous blood that has been shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. I tell you the truth, all this will come upon this generation. What incredible storytelling symmetry that Jesus' first shot he fires at that crowd is also the last shot he fires at that crowd. And that in a book that is loaded with imagery and language from Zechariah, we see that Jesus, by firing those 2 shots, is effectively echoing the corrective message of the prophet Zechariah. And that's like 560 years before what's going on here. Think about what was going on 560 years ago. Name a person who was alive 560 years ago off the top of your head in the next 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. It's hard because it was a really long time ago, and yet where we feel almost no continuity between 560 years ago to now, there is clear continuity between 560 years ago in Zechariah and what we're seeing paid off in Matthew. I just wanted to turn on the microphone and remark again at how dang good this material is. Even to the person who ultimately says, I don't even think there's a God behind it. I'm not a fan. I don't know about the religious part. Even to that person, a careful look at this document is just spellbinding. I am in awe of how amazing this thing is. And every time you and I discover something as we dig deep into this, I'm excited about it again. And you know what? God bless Star Wars, because they're doing their best, possibly, or maybe not their absolute best, but they're trying and making lots of things and whatever, and it's cute and it's fine and it passes the time and keeps your attention. It's kind of a modern myth, like whatever. Good try, Star Wars. It's fine. It's just totally not fair to even stack these two things up against each other, because Star Wars is a money-driven, modern financial franchise, and I'm comparing it to the best assembled, best constructed piece of human writing in the history of ever. It's just fun to occasionally stop and marvel at all of that together. And that's what I figured we would do today. Thank you for indulging me this dang look at how all of this fits together. Isn't it exciting to discover these things? Little spike of the football together. We will take our next steps forward on the book of Matthew tomorrow. One other quick note here before we shut it down. I uploaded some music, the little cover that we did at the end of an episode earlier this week or last week. I uploaded that last week for all the patrons of the program supporting at any level. If you haven't gone and checked in at patreon.com/the TMBH podcast and you are a patron, you should definitely do that from time to time, because increasingly we're taking fun stuff that we do and giving it to you there in a downloadable, ownable form just to say thank you. Also, a lot of the old talks/sermons that we've put up and then taken down for the sake of continuity in the back catalog. Slowly, we are putting those there as well. And I just posted one on the wheat and the tares from way back in the day for all of the patrons over at patreon.com/the TMBH podcast. So if you like that stuff, if you want to be around it, you don't even have to support for a lot. Just everybody who's over there, that's a way of saying thank you for making this thing go. It would not exist without you. All right, that's it. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.